Have you ever imagined standing before a maddened crowd, screaming for blood, and knowing that the next one to die is you? Welcome to the arena of the Coliseum, where the fate of many Christians was sealed in brutal and ruthless fashion. Throughout history, many hearts have been touched by stories of courage and sacrifice, but few are as intense as those that unfolded here, in the shadows of the deadliest arena in the Roman Empire. What motivated men and women to face beasts and gladiators, with the certainty that their lives would be taken? Today, you will discover what really happened within these walls, where blood and faith mixed together. In this account, we will delve deep into the history behind these sacrifices. The persecutions of Christians were not just acts of gratuitous violence, but part of a larger plan by the Roman Empire to silence a faith that refused to bow to power. In the Coliseum, the greatest stage of pain and death in antiquity, thousands of Christians faced the inevitable: gladiators, hungry beasts, and the public thirsty for spectacle. But what was at stake was much more than their lives. It was their faith. Prepare to discover how, in the midst of horror, an unshakable hope was born, and understand what led these people to choose death over renunciation. The year is 64 AD. Rome is in flames. The fire devastates the city, and suspicion falls on Emperor Nero himself. But instead of taking the blame, he finds a convenient target: the Christians. To the Roman people, this new religion seemed strange, threatening, something that challenged the traditions and authority of the empire. Nero, in his search for a scapegoat, launches the first of many brutal persecutions. Christians are arrested, tortured, and eventually thrown into the arenas, where death becomes entertainment. These arenas, like the Coliseum, were not just places of combat. They were the heart of a society that reveled in bloodshed, but also the place where the Christian faith would be tested to the limit. It was a time when professing Christianity could mean your death sentence. The audience cheered as men, women, and even children were thrown to gladiators or wild beasts. For them, the spectacle was pure entertainment, but for Christians, it was the final moment of a silent struggle for their faith. Now imagine the heavy silence that falls over the arena. The crowd stands in anticipation, the distant roar of lions drowned out by the sound of the iron doors opening. In the center of the arena, a young woman stands firm. Her name is Perpetua, a recent Christian convert, mother of a baby she will never see again. Her unwavering faith has brought her here, facing certain death. All around her, the gladiators ready their weapons. The hungry beasts, kept without food for days, smell the fresh meat. The crowd screams for blood, but Perpetua does not waver. With her eyes raised, she knows that her faith will be tested to the last moment. Every step is an act of silent resistance. She could give up, could save her life with just a few words, but she does not. Her martyrdom becomes a living testament to courage, something that many Christians in Rome would come to see as an inevitable but glorious fate. The roar of the beasts finally fills the Coliseum. Perpetua, like so many others before and after her, gives herself up to sacrifice, transforming what was supposed to be just an execution into a moment of faith that would echo for generations. But something surprising began to happen. With each Christian who fell in the arena, the faith they professed grew stronger. The brutality that should have terrified the population and dismantled the religion actually inflamed the spirit of resistance. The persecution reached its peak during the reign of Diocletian, the emperor who sought to eradicate Christianity once and for all. Their laws ordered the destruction of sacred scriptures, the imprisonment of Christian leaders, and the sacrifice of any followers who refused to worship the Roman gods. The violence was merciless. But ironically, the more the empire tried to stifle Christianity, the more it flourished. Stories of martyrs in the arena spread like wildfire, inspiring others to embrace the faith. Scenes of pain and sacrifice were transformed into stories of unbreakable courage. The crowds that cheered the spectacle of death began to see something different, an inner power that neither beasts, nor swords, nor the will of the emperor could break. It was at this moment, at this turning point, that the unthinkable began to happen. Christianity, a small, marginalized sect, was growing beneath the feet of the most powerful empire in the world. And it was at this turning point that the consequences became clear. The sacrifice of the Christians in the Coliseum, which should have been a sign of weakness, became the strength that united the Christian community. Each death, each martyrdom, was seen not as the end, but as an act of heroism, a testimony to the faith that refused to be broken. Contrary to what the Roman Empire had planned, the surviving Christians, instead of hiding, grew stronger. The faith, which had previously been secret, now grew in full view, fed by the blood of the martyrs. The courage of those who died in the arenas echoed throughout the empire. Martyrdom became a symbol of unwavering resistance, inspiring not only Christians but even those who witnessed their deaths. The Coliseum, the scene of so many executions, began to transform itself into something more than a place of bloody spectacles. It became an altar of faith, where each life lost served as a seed for new believers. History took an unexpected turn. What was planned as annihilation became the fertile ground for the growth of a new religion. And so, the faith that the Romans had tried to destroy spread with greater force. Each martyr Christian became a living flame, inspiring hundreds of new converts to embrace this religion that, in some inexplicable way, had survived oppression. And here's something few people know: persecuted Christians needed to find ways to communicate and identify their fellow believers without being detected by the Roman authorities. It was in this context that secret symbols emerged, such as the famous fish, known as ichthys. At first glance, it was just a simple drawing, but for Christians, it carried a profound meaning. A code, a silent password. When two strangers met, one would draw half of the fish in the sand, and the other would complete the symbol if he was a follower of Christ. A discreet way of saying, "You are safe here." This invisible network of solidarity and resistance spread throughout Rome, keeping the flame of faith alive even in times of greatest persecution. Small gestures like this were more than signs of survival. They were reminders that, even in the shadows, the light of faith persisted, illuminating the path of those who refused to give up. Now, let's look at the present. That faith that survived the arenas, the wild beasts and the Roman swords spread throughout the world and shaped cultures and nations. But the story of the martyrs of the Coliseum is not just a distant tale, confined to the past. In many parts of the world, religious persecution still exists. Men and women are still forced to hide their beliefs, facing threats of death, imprisonment, and exile. The courage that Perpetua and so many others demonstrated resonates to this day, in societies that continue to fight for freedom of faith and expression. Have you ever wondered if history can repeat itself? Religious intolerance still echoes, no longer in the Roman arenas, but in the courts, on the battlefields, and in the streets. The lessons left by the martyrs are a constant reminder that freedom, whether spiritual or political, is never won without sacrifice. The faith that survived Rome now faces new challenges, but the strength that kept it alive in the Coliseum remains the same that resists today. So what can we learn from all this? The persecutions of Christians in the Coliseum were not just spectacles of horror and cruelty. They were tests of faith, resilience, and sacrifice. Every death in the arena, every cry of pain, was not in vain. These martyrs became the foundation of a religion that would grow and spread throughout the world. Their stories teach us that even in the face of the most relentless oppression, the inner strength of an ideal can endure and, in many cases, prevail. These lives were not just taken, they were offered in the name of something greater, something that transcends fear and pain. And what began as an attempt at silencing became the starting point for a spiritual revolution that would shape the history of humanity. The Roman arenas may have silenced their voices, but their stories continue to echo, inspiring generations to keep their faith even when the darkness seems invincible. And now, I leave you with a question. If you were in the place of those martyrs, what would you do? Would you be able to keep your faith in the face of death, like Perpetua, or would you sacrifice yourself for an ideal, even under the weight of hungry beasts and the sharp swords of the gladiators? The story of the martyrs of the Coliseum is not only a lesson in courage, it is an invitation to reflect on what it means to believe in something so deeply that not even the threat of death can shake it. If this story touched you, if it made you think about sacrifice and resilience, I invite you to leave a comment and share your opinions. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, And don't forget to activate the bell for more stories like this, which make us look at the past with new eyes and challenge us to reflect on the present. And now I ask you, what would you do in the arena?